Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Grow Your Recruitment Business in 2021 LinkedIn Live Show. I have a very special guest with me today, Steve Guest, who I will introduce properly in a moment. As you know, there is a delay between us going live on StreamYard and you actually being able to see us. So as you log on, please do come on and say hello in the chat. Let us know who is watching. Our subject today is all things personal branding. So we absolutely would love you to interact with us during the broadcast, ask any questions, and we'll do a live Q&A at the end as well. So as you come on, please do say hello. Let us know who's watching and also let us know all of your personal branding questions. Format for today, we're going to talk about why it's important to have a personal brand for a recruiter in 2021 and beyond. We're going to talk about Steve's personal brand journey and mine. We're also both going to give our top tips for starting your own personal brand. And then we're going to finish with that Q&A at the end. So come on and say hello. If you're watching on the replay, it's still nice to know who's watched. So please do say hello on the replay as well. And we will happily answer any questions after the broadcast as well. So just give you a couple of minutes to log on. And then we will start with the content. Hi, Neil. We are doing well. Thank you very much for asking. Just wait a couple of minutes for people to log on. As I said, please do interact with us. We like to know your questions. We want to know what you think a personal brand should be for a recruiter, whether you think it's important, whether what we're saying is resonating with you, whether you have any specific questions about building your own as well. So we'll kick off. So if you follow me regularly, you know that I'm a huge advocate of personal branding for recruiters. Personal branding is all about building a relationship on a scalable level. So much so that I ran the Grow Your Recruiter Personal Brand Free Challenge last week, and I actually teach recruiters how to successfully brand themselves on LinkedIn via my LinkedIn Content for Recruiters course. Now, you might be thinking, Lindsay, I am so busy with new jobs right now. I haven't got time for this personal branding stuff. However, in today's market, a personal brand doesn't just bring in new clients. Maybe even more importantly, right now, it brings in new candidates as well. So essentially, having a personal brand means that more people know who you are, what you do, and how you do it. It means that more people know, like, and trust you. And the most important part, in 2021 and beyond, social media allows us to build that know, like, and trust on a scalable level like never before. So I firmly believe, as you know, that a personal brand is essential for every recruiter in this day and age, and that every new recruiter should be taught how to build a personal brand as part of their training. So the reason I invited Steve to join me today is because he has experience, like me firsthand, how creating a personal brand can grow your reputation and your business. So much so that he's actually written a book about it. He was kind enough to send me a copy earlier in the summer. It's called A Personal Brand Story, and it is a story about Steve's journey to building his personal brand. And there's also some amazing actionable tips in there on how you can build your own personal brand again. So welcome again to Steve. For those of you who don't know Steve, I'm sure most of you already do. Steve's been in the recruitment industry for over 15 years. He still runs his own recruitment business, SGS Consultancy Services. He is also a published author, not only of The Personal Brand Story, which I showed you, but also of Top Biller, which I believe is the #1 recruitment book on Amazon. Steve, is that right?
Yeah, it still is.
And he also hosts a podcast as well called The Guest List. So Steve, why do you think having a personal brand is so important for recruiters today?
I think personal branding within recruitment's always been there. Even from the very start, 15, 16 years ago when I first started getting into recruitment, it was about selling how you were different to your competitors. It was about what are you going to do that's different for your clients? How are you going to find the best people? But a lot of it was spent on the phone or face-to-face meetings where you were talking to clients and candidates saying why you are the person to go to. I think the brilliance of social media and the ability to then market that message to thousands of people instead of that one-to-one phone call or one-to-one face-to-face has brought the power of personal branding so much more to the forefront and made it easier for everybody to do it. And I think 2021 we're at a point now where building that personal brand, becoming that go-to person, is far more accessible to everybody than it's ever been.
Absolutely. We were saying before we came on, weren't we, that it's not rocket science. Anyone can do it if they kind of have a strategy.
It's about keep turning up. And I think I made a success in being a recruiter at the start because I was willing to work harder and call more people, meet more people, and be at the top levels of activity because I wanted to deliver for clients and candidates. Whilst that hasn't changed 15, 16 years on, the ability to get my message across more quickly and to a wider group of people has effectively allowed the personal brand to almost kind of take over in some way. Whilst it doesn't take away the activity, it complements it. Mm-hmm. It just means you can allow your market to work for you while you're not actually having to pick up the phone or physically go and meet somebody.
Absolutely. One of my favourite things about content marketing is that you can post something first thing in the morning and it works for you all day whilst you're busy doing other stuff.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think sometimes we get lost in the fact that we're looking for likes and comments. That social media love. What we don't realise is once we've put something out there and we've posted something, it's still visible to people that don't interact. And quite often, us as recruiters, people aren't going to necessarily advertise they're looking for a new role on one of your posts. And clients aren't going to comment saying, oh, I need one of those too. So we're almost at the bottom rung because our audience may not kind of engage with our posts anyway. But what happens off the platform once you put the social media post is far more powerful. And people don't necessarily see that until they start posting. And even then, recruiters don't tend to quantify it to the basis that somebody's contacted them from a social media post because we don't ask the question. We just have a call or an email land in our inbox. And I think that's the power of it. I think back when I first started recruiting, I used to collect testimonials off clients and candidates off successful placements or roles filled. And I used to have a folder with letter-headed paper that I would take round to clients and say, when they said, why would I use you over anybody else? I used to say, well, have a look through this folder and you can make a decision for yourselves. And I'd purposely put the competitors' testimonials at the top because I wanted them to see that I'm working with everyone that's around them. And that was one of my selling tools. I don't need to do that now because they can actually see it from my social media postings.
Yeah, much more effective, isn't it? And I think that's the thing. We don't always know who's watching. So it's our job to be showing up consistently because even if they're not engaging with us, we're building up a reputation. And I think when we quantify things like, say, content marketing on LinkedIn, it's not just about getting a message from that person on LinkedIn. It may very well be that because of our personal brand on LinkedIn, they're actually more likely to pick up our phone call. They're actually more likely to open our direct message because they already know our name, they trust us, purely from the fact that we've been kind of building that relationship with them online as well.
It's so true, isn't it? I mean, the amount of networking meetings I've been to, I can walk into a room of people that I don't know, and you'll have people come up to you and start talking to you, and you're listening to them thinking, I have no idea who you are. And then you have to stop them to say, I'm really sorry, I don't know who you are. And they'll introduce themselves and then apologize, say, I'm really sorry, I've seen you so much on social media, I feel like I already know you. And they'll just be talking away, which is great because it's a warmer relationship than me having to walk up and introduce myself, which would have been the old school networking.
That's massively powerful, isn't it? Massively powerful when people feel like they know us, even when they've never met us.
Yeah, I had a now client, wasn't a client at the time, messaged me probably going back about 4 or 5 months, and it was an email on LinkedIn, and it simply said, "Hi Steve, I'm about to move positions to a new company. We have a requirement for a QS for our West Midlands office. I really want you to help us find this person. Can you give me a call tomorrow?" And this person was connected with me on LinkedIn, but I'd never spoken to them. I didn't really know them. I wasn't aware, if I'm honest, we were connected. And I sent a message saying, yeah, of course, I'll give you a shout tomorrow. Can I just ask, why have you sent me the message? What made you pick me out of anybody else? And their answer was, you're busy on LinkedIn all the time. You're marketing and promoting roles that we know we need to fill. And you look like you are the go-to person in the market for this type of recruitment. That was it. So I've instantly got something from just being consistent and turning up every day, from no phone calls, no direct marketing, and no specifics with that company or client. I'd created and built a personal brand that people trust and rely on, that feels, or that allows them to feel that they can come to me when they've got a requirement. And that's what it's all about.
And it kind of actually cuts the sales process, doesn't it? Because what I always say to my clients is we're looking to generate inbound leads, but we're not looking to generate inbound leads from someone asking what we do. We're actually generating inbound leads from people that already know what we do, how we do it, and who we do it for. They already know that we're good at it because we've been sharing testimonials. They know that they want to work with us over all our competitors. And actually, they've already made that buying decision. There's going to be no quibble over fees because they've chosen to work with us purely for the fact that, as you said, we've been consistently showing up and educating them. We're not been selling anything. We've been adding value. We've been educating them as to who we are and what we do and why we're the best person to work for them in the market.
Yeah, I quite often have conversations on the basis that if you've got a business on LinkedIn and they have a requirement, and you've got a recruitment consultant that posts a couple of times a day in terms of job roles, market, how they're feeling, what they're doing, how they go about their business, and you've got someone that doesn't post, and they're sat in a meeting deciding who they're going to go and approach, if they're active on social media as well, for me, there's only one option there. It's the person that turns up every day and consistently reminds the market that this is what they specialise in and this is what they do really well. It won't be the person that is sat in an office that still relies on phone calls as their best way of marketing, because they won't know they're there unless they've spoken.
Absolutely. That's a really great point, isn't it? Because it's not just about people knowing who we are. It's about them being able to actually have a nosy and find out all about us by going back through our stuff, by looking at our profiles, and actually by looking at what we've been doing. That automatically gives us credibility, doesn't it?
We all do it, don't we? We all follow people and not engage. We all watch and make assessments or judgments on people. Whether we think we do or we don't, we do. And I think they say it takes 7 to 8 touch points to build a working or business relationship. Old school recruiting, for me, I was always advised it takes 6 to 9 months to build a recruitment desk. So if that works in that fact and you're ringing a client once a month, it probably makes sense. 6 to 9 months, 7 phone calls over 4 weeks, over 7 months builds the working relationship. If you're posting, I try and post twice a day, 10 times a week. If that one contact sees 7 out of my 10 posts that week, in theory, that's 7 touch points done in 5 days. It brings the process a lot closer, and it allows people to make a judgment on you and whether they like and trust, as you say, and know you enough to make a phone call to say, Steve, we've got a requirement. Can you help?
Absolutely.
It's easy.
It is. I think, and that's, we were saying before we came on that it's so easy. Yeah, I think there are still barriers to personal branding because people assume it's hard. But people also assume you have to be massively confident and you have to be an extrovert to be doing these things. And I know that both of us are not that type of person at all.
Yeah.
Actually, I would much rather be speaking on a LinkedIn Live than I would in front of a room full of people. For me, that's easier. And I think for me on my own journey, I had to push myself out of my comfort zone, absolutely. But if you have a strategy, if you show up consistently, you get that positive feedback from your audience. You start to get the benefits from it. So that spurs you on to do more of it, doesn't it? And I think people who know Steve and what he has achieved might be quite surprised to find out that you are quite shy.
I'm very shy. I was always the kind of quiet, unassuming person that sits at the back of the room. I'm known for taking copious amounts of notes, and I don't tend to shout out. I certainly don't jump in with both feet. And everything is very measured. I've always been like that. And I think I've been on a personal development and growth journey for a number of years, really, since our first son was born, 9 years ago. And part of that was always to kind of ensure that I keep pushing outside the comfort zone. And I think if you've got the motivations and your reason why that's far bigger than any kind of one moment in time that you might fear or be uncomfortable with, like posting a social media video or putting a social media post out in its first instant. It took me about 18 months to put my first social media video out. 18 months of procrastination, excuses, finding all the reasons why I should or shouldn't do it. You would stop at anything. I would say I used to do quite a bit of networking in property circles, property investment circles, and they'd say, right, you need to go outside on the break and record your first video, tell everyone where you are, tell everyone what you do. And I would just find every excuse. I'd go to the toilet a couple of times. I'd go and find an extra coffee. I'd go back to the car and pick up a pen. I'd be the one person in that room where when you've gone back, you hear all these stories. I've done this, and some of the videos were amazing. Some of them weren't so great, but they still did it. And I was sat there thinking, not a chance, because I didn't see the point. And if I'm honest, that first video was rubbish. It was about 30 seconds, no real content or value, but it got me over my personal hurdle. And now I've got no problems with video. It's still not high on my list because they're not necessarily enjoyable. But I understand why I do it, and I understand the reasons behind why I do it, because it can get me to my goals that are bigger than doing a social media video far quicker.
Absolutely. I mean, I still hate doing video. People might think that's hilarious because I have a LinkedIn live show, but it's still not my favorite thing to do. The first one for me is always the hardest. I think when people have done that first one, it doesn't matter if it's rubbish. My first videos were terrible. Sometimes they still are. None of us are perfect, but actually the power of being able to see someone's face and hear their voice, as well as hearing their message, actually is a massively powerful thing in building that kind of brand where people feel as if they know you. So I always use the example that if you put out one video, one 1 minute video that can potentially get seen by hundreds, if not thousands of prospects, that's time well spent, rather than banging out hundreds of business development calls and actually getting a voicemail. So for me, it's kind of doing the hard thing to get the result that you're looking for. And actually, once you get over that hurdle of doing it once, it becomes much, much easier. I actually got a message yesterday from a brand new client, which will resonate with you, Steve. She actually put, "Thank you. After just one post, my exposure is the highest it's ever been. Never did I think the words, 'I can't wait to post more,' would ever come out of my mouth." And I thought that was a really good example, because yesterday she didn't want to do it. She actually said, "Oh, I'll write it tonight." And I said, "No, write it now. Put it out in the next half an hour, because if not, you won't do it." And I know for a fact she would have talked herself out of doing it, but she did it. First post in months and months and months. She got loads of exposure from it, from one post. So I'm not saying that you can build your personal brand overnight. Absolutely not. It does take time to build that know, like, and trust. But actually, just taking that first step can make a huge, huge difference. So obviously your book, Steve, I think the reason I love your personal brand story so much is because it's part story, part about you and your personal brand story, but it's part actionable tips that people can actually go away and start building their own personal brand as well. So I know that you said obviously it was a journey for you. Do you want to share the journey that you've been on, kind of from day one in deciding to build that personal brand to where you are today?
Yeah, I think the reason I wrote it as a story was, in my experience, I'm sure it's the same as you and probably a lot of the people that are watching, people don't like putting themselves out there. They feel like they're going to get ridiculed. They feel like the trolls are going to come out in force and tear you down and do everything else. And don't get me wrong, I was there completely, and I completely got it and still get it. But I wanted to show and prove that actually personal brands can be really powerful. And as you say, if you can get your personal brand working while you're still doing everything else that you do, I still cold call, I still do all the activity. But once the post's out, once the personal brand's out, it's working for me as well for the inbound side. And you have to kind of start off just trying a post, just trying that first video, and constantly trying to push to deliver, to grow that personal brand in various guises. I read a book a few years ago by Daniel Priestley called A Key Person of Influence. It's a great book if people haven't read it. And it talks about having assets and virtual assets. It has the ability that you have content out there that allows you to become the go-to person. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to become the go-to person in construction recruitment, going back probably 4 or 5 years when I really started to put things in place. And I went and met Daniel Priestley. I've got a signed copy of the Key Person of Influence, and he's even wrote a key person of, is it construction influence? I think he's wrote in the front of the book. And I set about, that's where I thought about writing Top Biller, the first kind of thought process. I wanted Top Biller to become my business card in terms of my market. So people got to know me as the recruiter that wrote the book. And it's kind of escalated, and I've grabbed various opportunities as they come through that I know will accentuate the personal brand story, because I want to attract people to me, whether it's clients and candidates in the marketplace, whether it's people that want to listen to the podcast or be involved with the podcast, because that's part of life anyway, part of the enjoyment. You get motivated, ambitious, driven individuals around you that are part of the same path. It actually becomes far more enjoyable, far more exciting, and it pushes you to new limits that you didn't know were possible, because you've got people on the same wavelength. So there's been lots of hurdles. There've been lots of things, certainly in the pandemic. While we were in lockdown, that created a whole new area in terms of putting myself out there. I did my first webinars. My first one oversubscribed by a huge amount. Again, another book by Daniel Priestley called Oversubscribed. And the ability to do things that make you uncomfortable. Once you've done them, you realise afterwards that all the worry really wasn't worth the worry, because it goes okay. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Just get used to it. One more thing I'd like to say is I've always been a bit of a perfectionist. I am probably borderline OCD, process, procedure, spreadsheet savvy. I like things to be pretty exact. And I never used to post because I would always find something slightly wrong, and it wasn't quite 100% accurate, certainly in videos. And I got to the point where if I could be 75% happy with something, or it was generally there, the message was generally there, I'd just let it go. We talked off air before we came on here, and the fact that I don't watch things back. I never have done. And part of that is because I know if I watched it back, I'd probably delete it. So it goes out. Once it's out, it's out. It's there forever. And hopefully it engages, hopefully it adds value and grabs people. If it doesn't, then the next one will. And I just keep moving on. Every post is one post in 1,000. And we'll see where it goes.
I think it's a great perspective to have, because as you said, we talked off air about this, and I was saying that when I do watch things back, I'm my own biggest critic, and I think that we all are. So I think, it's never going to be perfect. We are never going to think that anything's perfect, but actually something that actually gets put out in front of your audience has the potential to get you business. If you don't post it, then you're not getting that opportunity. So it's pushing yourself that far to kind of start doing it. Now, I am not saying that if you haven't got a personal brand already, you have to go out and write a book like Steve, or a podcast, or whatever it might be. My advice really is to start small, to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to start showing up on a consistent basis to the right audience. So it also, for personal branding, for me, all starts with identifying who you want to attract, finding out what social media they use, what do they read, what podcasts do they listen to, where they hang out, and then actively connecting with them, building a relationship with them through your content, because content is still building a relationship, just on another platform, and consistently showing up. When I speak to people, when I go to a room full of people, say a networking event, people will say to me, Lindsay, I see you everywhere. And that is a brilliant thing. Imagine, for free, say on LinkedIn through content, for example, if people see you everywhere, they're not going to forget about you. They're more likely to think about you when they've got an opportunity. So taking those first steps, starting small, putting your first post out, as long as you're building the right audience, then consistently building a relationship with them, just as you would on other forms, say in a phone call, whatever it may be, will get you to where you want to be. However, it may not happen overnight. So it is about putting the work in consistently, like Steve said, putting it out there and not worrying too much about what happens, and then moving on to the next thing. People respond to different things. Some recruiters very much chase engagement, but actually all the likes in the world from the wrong people are not going to make any difference. So don't focus on engagement, focus on consistency, getting the right message out there to the right people, allowing them to get to know you. Share things about how you do things at work, what types of clients you're working with, what types of jobs you're working on. Share testimonials, show people that you are good at what you do, and don't feel afraid of putting that out there. You also need to put the personal in personal brand. And I know that this is something that I really struggled with. I know that Steve, being his personality, will have struggled with it as well, was actually putting a little bit of my personal life out there. But actually, people buy from people and not profiles. So it is important. I know that Steve says this in his book as well, to put some sort of personal content out there. And I know that this is something that people really struggle with. My best advice for personal content is to think of what you have in common with your ideal audience and start to share some of those things. It may be that you both have young families. It may be that you have the same hobbies, etc. If you share personal content that you have in common with your audience, actually, that builds commonality. They're more likely to engage with it. That builds your confidence, and then you will feel more confident in sharing the next thing that maybe is a little bit more personal. And people buy us as recruiters because they want to work with us the most, essentially because they like us the most. Therefore, we have to, we don't want to be a corporate cut-out recruiter. We want to be ourselves, and you want to be authentic with your personal brands, that people get to choose Steve or Lindsay or Luke or whoever it may be because they genuinely like us. They know that we're going to do a good job, and they want to work with us over anyone else. And that's the power of having a personal brand. What would you say are your top tips for building your personal brand, Steve?
I completely agree with the consistency. I split my week into, as I say, 10 posts. I try and put 7 posts out that are linked with my market or my business or what I'm specifically looking for or looking to work with. And then I'll have a couple of posts which is about me. So am I having a good week? Have I had a bad week? How am I feeling on any particular day? Do I feel motivated? Do I feel a bit dejected? And final post is generally something that's trending, so something that's topical, tending to avoid anything that can get you into trouble, religion, politics, anything that's a bit out there that you kind of want to divide opinion, but you want to divide it in the right way to get people talking on your post. So I would always say that those are my sorts of top tips. I would try and alternate between text posts, ones with photos, some videos, maybe I do audiograms. We don't get to choose, unfortunately, how the algorithms work on any given day, week or month. So try and kind of just see what others are doing that are working well, and implement similar sorts of strategies for how the post should be written. I think engagement can be a two-way thing. Well, it is a two-way thing. So actually engaging in other people's posts gets reciprocated. So don't be afraid to feel that actually being active on social media and growing that personal brand isn't part of just commenting on someone else's post. Just being involved and engaged can help. And I think that I wrote some words before we had this conversation today, and I wrote authentic, consistency, being humble and honest. Don't try and be something that you're not. I'm a qualified buyer by background. As I say, I am the quiet, relaxed, reserved, considered person. I'm never going to be over the top salesy and flash. So I've never tried to be. I'm just who I am. And people buy into that. Some people like that, some people don't. You're never going to please everyone, but as long as you're you, you'll always be able to cope with the comments and anything that comes through that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's only one you. So what I would say is take inspiration from other people, but kind of don't copy it. I had a client yesterday who very much is very reserved, and she thought that in order to have a personal brand on social media, she needed to be different. She needed to change her, almost put a persona on. And actually, that's the worst thing you can possibly do, because if people don't want to work with you, that's okay. You want to attract the clients that you really want to work with. You don't want to attract the people that want to work with that idealized version of you. And actually, if you go ahead with an idealized version of you, that's impossible to keep up. And that is going to make it much, much harder than if you are authentic and you are honest, because you'll attract the right people. And if you repel the wrong ones, that's okay, because not everyone is going to like us. That is why there are 39,000 recruitment businesses in the UK, but there's only one you. So that is your challenge, to go and build a personal brand that is authentic, that is honest. And if you do it consistently to the right audience, you will attract the right people. And as Steve said, it's not all about content. How you show up at all online, how you treat people, the posts that you comment on, the opinions that you give, people see it, people take note, and people build up an idea of what sort of person you are. And if you're the sort of person that can help them and they like you and they trust you, then that's obviously where those leads come through as well. Fantastic. Well, we're going to move on to our Q&A in a moment. Thank you so much, Steve. That was really, really amazing. I think you've given so much great information there. So we're going to move on to our Q&A. So please do start putting your questions for myself and Steve in the comments. If you are wanting to get a copy of Steve's book, and you absolutely should do, he kindly gifted me one in the summer, but you should absolutely go and buy one. If you're looking at starting your personal brand, you can buy that on Amazon, I believe.
You can, yeah. I think it's 7,000 bookstores worldwide, but Amazon is obviously the leader.
7,000, amazing. If you need more actionable help, then you can join my LinkedIn Content for Recruiters course, where I teach you my step-by-step strategy for building your recruiter personal brand on LinkedIn. I also teach you what the 18 different types of content that have worked for me on LinkedIn are, and how to write them, and also support you to write them as well. We have the last live round of 2021 starting on Monday, but there is an instant access version now as well. So if you are interested in either Steve's book or my course, I'll bob the links for both in the comments after the replay. So question for Steve from Luke. Do you struggle with content? Conscious not to fill my feed up with pointless content no one is interested in.
I don't struggle with content personally. I think I probably used to, and I've got that used to seeing or having things that happen. I'll give an example or a story. So I was talking to a guy that works within our shared office a couple of months ago, and he runs a used car sales business where he goes out, finds the used cars, does all the tests for the customer, and then obviously gives the car to the end client once they've found one. And he said, I struggle to know what to post, because who's going to be interested in used cars unless they're looking? I said, the biggest thing here is when you've got people ring you up and they ask you questions and you're answering the questions, there's your content, because they're questions that your audience needs to know the answers to. They're also a way of you selling what you do and what your business is. So how do you go and look for candidates? How do you pre-qualify them? How do you look for clients? How do you pre-qualify the jobs? How do you spend time in your market? The content is all around us if we can kind of start thinking in terms of, does that make a social media post? Does the answer to that actually answer the question to a bigger audience than just the one person that's asking it? And I think quite often in our office, when somebody's struggling, my general first answer is, well, how are you feeling today? What's worked? What hasn't? Where have your frustrations been? What's happening in the market that perhaps the wider audience needs? We unfortunately don't get to decide what our audience are interested in or not. Some of my best posts have been the most useless posts. So what's gone wrong with LinkedIn today? And that has just gone crazy. I've put posts where I've really thought about the content and added lots of value, and nobody's commented. And I've sat there going, what a waste of time that one was. So I think it's just about the fact that you try things, you put things out there. Some will work, some won't. Don't put too much onus on you deciding how your audience will interact. If it's relevant to your market and you feel it answers a question to a wider audience, then it will be of interest to some people, whether they engage or not.
Absolutely.
And say it's trial and error. It's a journey.
Absolutely. The important thing is that someone's always watching. I have no doubt that people read that amazing post, Steve, and really resonated with it. I mean, I've been through a massive journey with this myself, and that's how I came up with the 18 different types of content, because I tried loads of other types of stuff and it didn't work. So I then identified the ones that were working, and that's how I came up with my course in the first place. But let me tell you, it's taken me 10 years. So there's no actual science to it other than putting the work in. And what I'd say, Luke, for those of you who don't know Luke, he is a startup recruitment business owner, and from talking to Luke, because he's actually going to be a guest on this show in the next few weeks. Luke, you've got some amazing stories to tell. You've got an amazing startup story, and you know what you're doing for your clients and your staff is so different in the market. Talk about it. Tell people what you're doing. People are genuinely interested to see other people's journeys. I call it lifting back the curtain. Let people know what's going on behind the scenes, because that's how we build relationships with people. That's how they feel as if they know us. So share what's going on, in your business, share what's going on in the office, all those amazing things that you're doing in your business, Luke, for your staff, and the amazing benefits you're getting in your personal life. Share them, because people are genuinely interested in you. So I suspect you are a lot more interesting than you give yourself credit for. And I know that from having a conversation with you anyway. Holly, how do you best measure if content is working? Is it all just down to LinkedIn analytics? And if it's working, you'll know it. There's two different things that I would say. There's awareness and there's leads. And actually, sometimes you won't get leads straight away, but the more people that are aware of you, the more of a reputation you're building, actually those leads will come. Analytics are not everything. I have had very low performing posts that have actually given me my biggest revenue in terms of business from LinkedIn. So you can have a really high performing post like Steve's one about LinkedIn going wrong, and actually it might not bring you any business. You can put a post out that very few people see, but as long as one of the right people see it, as long as it resonates with that person, that could very well bring you business. You know, and it's not just about being a one-hit wonder. It is about putting that consistent content out there so that you're building a relationship with people, so that when they do need you, they know exactly who they want to work with and exactly how to find you. So yes, analytics are important in terms of measuring how many people are looking at your profile, for instance, because if a lot of people are looking at your profile because of the content that you're putting out there, because of the persona that you're building, then actually that's more likely to convert. However, like Steve said, some people never engage. They never like your stuff, they never comment, they never look at your profile, but when they need you, they do come to you. And those are the people that you are saying, how did you find me? And you'll find that if you're putting the work in there, it will be from the hard work that you're putting in. What would you say about that, Steve? What's your...
I would agree. So I don't measure it to any degree. I just know that it works. And I think that's probably me understanding it over a longer period of time. A couple of examples. So I had 3 people on interview about 3 or 4 weeks ago for a commercial manager role in the West Midlands. The client rang me and said, Steve, they're all good candidates, but they're not quite what we're after. We probably need to go back to market and find someone else. Following that conversation, I put a post out. It was about 2:00 on a Friday afternoon, just saying commercial manager required for West Midlands in a little bit of detail. Send me your CV if this is of interest. Within about 40 minutes of putting that post out, I had a guy that was in my network send me their details. It was a phone call. It was interviewed Monday morning, second interview Tuesday morning, offered, started the following Monday. If I hadn't put that post out, that person probably wouldn't have known I was looking for that role, and probably wouldn't have applied, because the advert for the job had been out for weeks. So just on the very nature of that happening so recently, I know it works. I know it pays for itself, and it's a consistent builder. I would say probably 80 to 85% of the jobs that I've filled this year have been through LinkedIn postings, not messages or emails. I send very few emails and messages through LinkedIn. The majority is coming back to me, or coming to me first, for me then to respond. There's lots of talk of job boards not working at the moment, or not being as effective as they used to be. And that would, again, back up the fact that what I'm doing works, because the job boards aren't. And that was always the go-to place for a recruiter: put the advert out, see who applies, and send them across. Social media marketing works. Personal branding works on the basis that people are trusting you over and above the person they can't see, who's an email address on a job board, because they want to talk to an individual about a position. So yeah, by all means measure it, but just get going. Don't worry about the analytics until you're doing the postings.
Absolutely. I think there's 2 key points there. Number 1, that person is in your network because you proactively building a network of the right people. And number 2, most people would have thought, oh, it's 2:00 on a Friday afternoon, I won't bother. But the very fact that you did it got you the result. And sometimes just with kind of BD and on the phone, sometimes it's just a game of luck. If we happen to get the right person on the right day, but unless we put ourselves out there, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Why not do both? You're calling people and you've got the post out, you're maximising your potential. It's about finding that edge.
Absolutely. Now, Elisa says, hi, Steve. I struggle to understand content. If I post something personal, I get 2K plus views. Yeah, I post about roles and candidates and get nothing. How can I bridge the gap to improve engagement?
I think we touched on this earlier, didn't we? So I put a post out for, I need a quantity surveyor in Birmingham. Am I going to get rafts of candidates put underneath that post and say, I'm looking, I'm interested, could you give me more details? Not likely. Am I going to get clients that respond to that post and say, I'm also looking for a QS? No chance. So the engagement for a advertised post is going to be minimal, and you're unlikely to get too much help either. You're going to get colleagues and people that you've asked to like your post because you need a bit of engagement, but generally the marketplace are not going to engage because it's volunteering the fact that they're potentially looking for a new role or a competitor is also looking for that position. So don't put too much onus on the fact that it's not getting engagement, because people are still looking and people are still seeing it. The reason I say to break your posts into 7 marketing, 2 individual and you, and 1 trending, is because you get the engagement from your whole audience and they've got no insecurities or concerns that they're doing anything they shouldn't. But it then brings them back to the posts that you've put out to say, I'm looking for a surveyor in Birmingham, because they can then get in touch because they've been brought to your profile. So we get caught up on the vanity metrics of likes, comments, and everything else within a post, which is important in effect to get your profile out there and your personal brand out there. And we do need that. But in terms of adverts and looking for people for which we can place, you're going to be getting things off the platform, not on it. And I think that's a really divided concept that we have to understand as recruiters. The adverts aren't going to get as high an engagement as you saying, I'm off playing golf on Friday afternoon because I've had a really good week. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Elisa. Personal posts get lots more engagement. They get lots more likes. They get lots more comments. Usually, especially if, and you should always try and do this, your personal post has a picture of you in it. It automatically stands out in the feed, much more than a job would. People automatically give it a like if they like you. People automatically, if you have some sort of question, maybe about what someone else is doing on the weekend, they'll automatically go and comment because it feels comfortable for them to do so, as it maybe doesn't on a job post. The other thing about a job post is, for instance, if Steve was advertising for a quantity surveyor, that post is only speaking to quantity surveyors. So if you're not a quantity surveyor, you're going to scroll straight past it. Whereas if you're someone in Steve's network and he's talking about going and playing golf on a Friday and you like golf, you're probably going to go and engage with that post. The other good point that Steve made there was the way that the LinkedIn algorithm works is if someone engages with one post, LinkedIn thinks that they think you're interesting, it automatically shows them your next post. So if they're engaging with your personal stuff, actually, if your next post is business related, they're going to see that one as well. So don't get too caught up in it. Make sure that you are posting lots of different types of content because people respond to different things. And if you post a personal post and it does brilliantly, amazing, because more people will see your next post. And if it's a job that you're looking to fill and one of those people happens to be a quantity surveyor, then you're much more likely obviously to get a message from them. We're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you to Steve for being such a fantastic guest, and I will see you next week at 12:30 for next week's episode of the Grow Your Recruitment Business in 2021 LinkedIn Live show. See you then.
Thank you. Bye.